Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Boss TV. Today we're going to talk about one of the least sexiest topics about being a self-employed music producer, but it's also really important. I've been a self-employed music producer for 8 years now, and figuring out the hard way with how to do my taxes has been a huge mountain to climb. I wish there was an abundance of resources on how to do our taxes properly as a self-employed music producer, and I think it's just an important subject to be talking about. So I'm going to share with you my top 3 tips that I've learned in my 8-year music career. If you want more great content that helps you with your music career, whether it's having excellent sound design, great mixes, or empowering yourself with knowledge and wisdom to execute your career better, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Before we get into my 3 tax tips, I'm going to tell you about 2 huge releases that came out on Black Octopus this week. The first one is called Reel-to-Reel Vintage Lo-Fi, made by an amazing producer. Say hi, Al.
Hey, my name is Al Hawk. I got a new pack out. It's called Reel-to-Reel Vintage Lo-Fi.
Reel-to-Reel Vintage Lo-Fi is made 100% with real instruments and processed with a vintage tape machine. This gives this pack a very special musicality and sonic quality to it. This guy has gotten some huge praise from music industry giants like Timbaland, and that really comes through in his first sample pack with us. The second pack I want to talk about is by far the biggest Serum preset pack that we've ever released.
Release the Kraken!
It is chock full with 300 Serum presets, all made for dubstep and bass music. Every purchase of it comes with 50 free drum samples, and for a limited time only, we're running a very special introductory offer where you get 3 additional sample packs for free. You'll get a free copy of The Resistance Heavy Neuro Drum and Bass, Wicked Drum Hits 1 and 2. It's made by one of the best Serum sound designers on the Black Octopus roster, and if you're into that hard-hitting, modern style of bass music, it's a must check out.
Oh yeah!
Sweet! Now let's get to that exciting topic, taxes. I'll start off with number 1 by talking about the biggest mistake a person can make when it comes to managing their self-employed music professional taxes. It's doing your taxes and expenses haphazardly, randomly, chaotically, without much of a system or a framework. In fact, that's the key word. We need to create a system. A system is a framework or a structure that is replicable, which is replicable and repeatable. To give an example, the system that I have in place, whenever it comes for me to look at my income and expenses in my music career, I have a checklist that I use. I start with looking at my income in my bank statements, and I calculate how much money I've made there. My next step is I go to PayPal and look at my income through PayPal, and then I add that to my total revenue. What we want to do is go through all of the ways that we receive revenue and add those up. And I find that having a checklist is super helpful because it helps me ensure that I don't miss anything. After that, I go through my bank statements and I look for different types of expenses. There's a few different types of expenses that we need to watch out for. The first one is our regular expenses that repeat themselves. These are things like subscriptions like Dropbox or SoundCloud. Literally any type of expense that comes out on a monthly basis that you use towards your music career. The other type of expenses are regular payments that do not happen frequently. These are things like yearly annual subscriptions. Another type of expenses are things that we buy randomly, when we buy a piece of gear once or a few times a year. A piece of software when software goes on sale. I literally go through all of my bank statements again and I look for these expenses. After I go through my bank statements, I do the exact same thing but on PayPal. I go through my entire PayPal and look for things like website registrations. Maybe I paid a graphic designer for artwork. Anytime I spent money on building my music producer business. After PayPal, the next thing that I do, I go through my Amazon order history. I go through every purchase for the year. If my purchase was used towards my music career, I make sure that I track that expense. The next thing that I do is I go through my receipts that I've kept over the year. And this helps me segue into tip number 2. So tip number 2 is to use technology. There are some great apps that can help us manage our expenses. The one that I use personally is Expensify. It works for me. I haven't tried any of the other ones. I'm sure there's other great ones out there, but for me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I use Expensify. Now, what I do is, to the absolute best of my ability, every single time I make a purchase of some sort towards my music career, I take a picture of the receipt, which is a huge benefit because receipts fade over time. And if we ever get audited down the road, having a photograph that's uploaded to the cloud is really helpful. I enter which business I made the purchase from. I make a note of which category of tax write-off this goes into, whether it be travel, meals, entertainment, office supplies, or business supplies. This helps me or my accountant categorize everything at the end of the year much easier. I enter the date of the purchase, the dollar amount in my local currency that I'm filing my taxes in, and I get that number from my bank account or my credit card statement, so I know exactly how much I was charged. Sometimes when I get a receipt or an invoice from a company, it's in another currency like British pounds or Australian dollars. And so for better accuracy, I input all of my expense data in my local currency, which is Canadian dollars. Expensify is a fantastic app, and at the end of the year, I can isolate in their date parameters every expense that I've entered into the year. When I told you in tip number 1, how I go through my bank statements, my PayPal, my credit card statements, if I find expenses, they all get entered in Expensify. Now, one thing that's important is that we have a receipt for everything that we enter. If you have a receipt that's missing, often there is a way to obtain that. For example, when I purchase gear from my local music store, I have my own file, and so they can look up my entire purchase history. My third and final tip, when people say the word taxes, there can often be this resistant internal fight that starts to happen, and we get tense and a little bit resistant. It's kind of one of those uncomfortable subjects that people tend to bury under the rug. What I'm advocating here is having a healthier relationship with taxes. What I'm talking about is the mastery of how we relate with life. Do we relate with life from a way that's resistant, closed off, and we push back? We have a little bit of a fight, flight, or freeze response? Or are we dropped in and present and willing to engage with what's in front of us? Can we build the character strengths that are required for us to fulfill our tax and expense tracking in a healthy way? Character traits like perseverance, focus, dedication, maybe courage if it's a scary topic for you. I'm talking about reframing how we relate to our taxes and expense tracking. They say money doesn't buy happiness, but one thing I know for sure, if we have money problems in our life, it can sure make us unhappy, sometimes in the form of anxiety or depression. So, having a healthy relationship with our taxes and expenses and making sure our responsibilities are handled year in and year out, it creates a very unique type of stability and ease in our world. That's the reward. Having a healthy relationship with our taxes and expenses is actually super beneficial to our mental health. I really hope you're able to get some value out of these tips, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.